Hello and welcome to the Shakespeare podcast. Today we're going to look at Macbeth and the Witches, also known as the Weird Sisters, and what role they have in the play. The Witches open Macbeth like a motif. Right off the bat, Shakespeare gives us the most sensational element of the play. The opening is designed to grab the audience's attention right from the beginning. So it's interesting that this scene is often cut from modern productions, who start the play with Duncan and the battle scene. This reflects a couple of changes in our attitudes to witches in general. 40 years ago, all productions of Macbeth started with three women in pointy hats sat around a cauldron, with thunder and lightning in the background off stage, and the witches saying, "Fur is foul, and foul is fur, hover through the fog and filthy air." Older audiences loved this kind of thing, but that was probably the problem. It was all a bit panto, a bit like Aladdin with the genie, or Cinderella with the fairy godmother. To modern attitudes and ideas, it didn't seem to fit with the mature Shakespeare tragedy and some of the profound themes that the play deals with. A similar fate befell the witches scene in Act 3, Scene 5, the one with Hecate's speech. What's it doing there? On the one hand, it has no function for the development of the plot, and some scholars are so unhappy with the quality, or lack thereof, of Hecate's speech that they argue that the scene is a later addition, not written by Shakespeare at all. On the other hand, Act 3, Scene 5 ramps up the supernatural element of the play, and it emphasises the role that the witches, the Weird Sisters, play in Macbeth's downfall. But let's get back to Act 1 and the important Scene 3, where the Weird Sisters predict Macbeth becoming Thane of Cawdor and then of course becoming king. The scene opens with the Weird Sisters discussing how nasty and wicked they really are, and how they're going to torment a sailor on a ship called the Tiger because his wife was unkind to one of them. This is to set up their general wickedness before Macbeth and Banquo enter. Notice that Macbeth's opening line is, "So foul and fair a day I have not seen," which of course echoes the witch's phrase at the opening of the play, "foul and fair." Macbeth is immediately unsettled by the Weird Sisters in a way that Banquo is not. Also, of course, the audience already knows that Macbeth is going to become Thane of Cawdor because Duncan has already talked about it. And the Weird Sisters vanish into the air, quote, "as breath into the wind." The scene is fast and to the point. Macbeth and Banquo have no time to discuss the situation and the Weird Sisters, but they decide that they will talk about what has happened at a later date. In the end, of course, they never do. And now, a short interlude to tell you to like and subscribe to the channel. And now, back to the podcast. And then, of course, there's the very big scene in Act 4, Scene 1, where the witches give Macbeth three important predictions. The scene opens Act 4. It's been set up already by Macbeth's response to the ghost of Banquo at the banquet, when he says to the ghost, Thy bones are marrowless, thy blood is cold. Macbeth is desperate, he needs reassurance from the witches, he's looking for answers. But before we go into those scenes in a little more depth, I want to take a short detour to answer an important question often asked about Macbeth, and that is, did Shakespeare's audiences really believe in witches? Well, of course, Macbeth was first produced in 1606, and that was at a time when not only did people believe in witches, but they felt that they lived amongst witches. Some 6 years after Macbeth first opened in London, there was a trial in Lancashire, England, in a small town called Pendle. In 1612, there was the famous Pendle Witch Trials. What's interesting about these witch trials is that there is a large amount of documentation that survives from the trial. Lots of transcripts, lots of affidavits that were made. There were 15 people, 9 of them women, 6 of them men, who were accused of being witches. And all 15 were eventually burnt at the stake for witchcraft. What's interesting is that at least 2 of the women agreed that they were confessed to being witches, who basically said, yes, it's a fur cop, you've got me, I'm a witch. And there's evidence given by a miller who lived near the town that one of his neighbours was an ugly old lady who owned a cat, and he gave the old lady a bag of corn every year because he was worried that she was a witch, and that if he didn't give her the bag of corn she would curse him. So it would appear from the transcripts of the Pendle Witch Trials that actually being a witch was a viable economic route if you were an old lady who didn't have a pension and didn't have any gainful means of employment. So Shakespeare's audience didn't just believe in witches, some of Shakespeare's audience believed that they were witches. In fact, Macbeth helped to kind of make the witch community more seen by representing them on stage. This was a minority group that didn't get representation enough in Jacobean theatre, although it was about to be more represented as time passed. So that was the reality of witches. However, in the play, of course, they're not referred to as witches at all. In the play, they're referred to as the Weird Sisters. And of course, what's important here is the word weird. The word weird is a medieval word. It comes from Middle English, and it actually means the ability to see into the future. So the witches are referred to in the text as the Weird Sisters because what they do is they predict the future. Now, there's been a huge cultural change here. In the 1900s and the 1800s, productions of Macbeth opened with 3 women in pointy hats sat around a cauldron saying fur is foul and foul is fur, hover through the fog and filthy air, in a kind of pantomime mode, a pantomime performance. They looked like witches from fairy tales. Now, modern productions take a very different tack on this. In modern productions, the Weird Sisters often reference horror movies like Saw and Halloween, or more recently, The Conjuring and The Nun. The emphasis is being placed on the psychological and religious elements of the supernatural. So you'll notice that in Act 4, Scene 1, there is quite a long preamble with the Weird Sisters before Macbeth arrives. And one of the Weird Sisters says, "By the pricking of my thumbs, something wicked this way comes." This is important. So all the audiences from Shakespeare's time down to today can agree that the weird sisters are supernatural, that they are forces of evil. And all the predictions are correct, of course. But even the weird sisters, the supernatural evil weird sisters, refer to Macbeth as something wicked. That is to say that as the audience, we thought the weird sisters were the ones who were wicked, but they're the ones who call Macbeth wicked. Remember, it's Macbeth who seeks them out. They don't seek Macbeth out in Act 4. He goes looking for them. It's Macbeth who wants answers from the weird sisters. He doesn't know how they know the future, and he doesn't really care. What he wants is answers because he's so disturbed by what's happened to him in Act 3. Notice also that he doesn't actually ask any questions. The weird sisters show him 3 apparitions without him asking a question. The inference being that the weird sisters already know why he's here and already know what he's going to ask them. So the first apparition tells Macbeth to beware of Macduff. And Macbeth says that that's a good thing for the apparition to tell him because he was worried about that. But Macbeth would like to know more and question the apparition further. But the apparition disappears, and another apparition appears to tell him that he can't be harmed by a man born of woman. Macbeth takes this as proof that he can't be defeated. Now we as the audience, we know that the weird sisters are evil, that Macbeth is being tricked and that he's falling for it. But the important thing here is that we can see the trickery, that there's a switch and bait taking place, that the weird sisters show him an apparition that tells him one thing, and before he's thought about it, they've shown him another apparition which tells him something else. And then immediately after that there's a third apparition which tells Macbeth that he'll be safe, that he can't be vanquished until Birnam Wood walks up Dunsinane Hill. Again, Macbeth believes that this makes him invincible, saying that will never happen. Again, we know that Macbeth is being tricked by the weird sisters. But if that wasn't enough, Macbeth wants to know more. And the weird sisters tell him not to ask any more. The weird sisters caution him against wanting to know more. But Macbeth threatens to curse them, which is ironic, of course, because the weird sisters are already cursed. They're already working for the devil. But because Macbeth threatens them, the witches then show him a procession of kings that are descended from Banquo. This makes Macbeth very mad, but all the weird sisters do is make fun of him before disappearing. At which point Lennox appears and Macbeth asks him, "Saw you the weird sisters?" But Lennox says that he's seen nothing. They've disappeared into thin air. So this emphasis on the supernatural sets us up for the rest of the play. The predictions tell us what's going to happen because, of course, the weird sisters are never wrong. But for the audience, those predictions act as a kind of teaser, or in film terms, it's like a trailer. We know that the weird sisters are going to be right. We know that Macbeth is going to be tricked, but we don't know how. How will Macbeth be vanquished by a man who's not been born of a woman? How can he lose a battle before a forest has walked up a hill? So the only way we can answer these questions is to watch the rest of the play. Overall, what the witches provide us with is a staging opportunity. So in many productions, the witches are accompanied with puffs of smoke, with dry ice, with flamethrowers. All kinds of things get used. And what happens is that The bigger, the more outlandish the staging, the more the emphasis falls on the supernatural element of the play. The bigger you make the witches' scenes, the more supernatural the play appears. And so it pushes Macbeth further and further towards being a horror story rather than a political story or a tragedy or a family drama. What the witches do is that they give Macbeth an extra dimension that it wouldn't ordinarily have. It gives the production an opportunity to show an outlandish staging activity. That's all for this episode. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time on the Shakespeare podcast.